Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast. I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Craig Dempsey of Biz Latin Hub Group. Craig, it's great to have you on the show.
Absolute pleasure. Looking forward to having a chat.
Definitely looking forward to it as well. And before we jumped into the interview, I want to read a little bit more about Craig so you can hear about all the awesome things that he's doing. And Craig is a seasoned business professional in Latin America. He is the managing director and co-founder of the Biz Latin Hub Group that specializes in the provision, market entry, and back office services. Craig holds a degree in mechanical engineering, with honors and a master's degree in project management from the University of New South Wales. Craig is also a military veteran, having served in the Australian military on numerous occasions, overseas missions, and also a former mining executive with experience in various overseas jurisdictions. Craig, great to have you on the show again. Are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
Sure, let's go.
Let's do it then. So to kind of kick everything off, I wanted to rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
Sure. Look, talking about myself, I guess is a reasonably good point to start. I come from a small town originally in Australia. Just for a little bit of context there, the original school I went to actually only had 4 people in my grade.
Wow.
So it's definitely, let's call it rural. So look, from there, ended up joining the military, as you've already mentioned there. Long story, but sort of a family history of that. So I went off to, I guess, Australia's equivalent of US West Point. Did my military service, served overseas on quite a number of jurisdictions in the world. Decided that I'd been in the military for long enough after about 11 years. Ended up in the mining sector, worked in Australia, got transferred across to Canada, worked in Canada for a while. Found myself down in Peru, and for those that don't know where Peru is, it's where Machu Picchu is in South America. Got bored with that, decided to, go back to my roots, put a backpack on and went backpacking. Found myself north of there in a country called Colombia, was there only about 2 weeks, ended up finding myself heading up a large multinational engineering company. Wasn't planned, just kind of happened. Did that for a while, then decided it was time to do something for myself. So I went off and set up this group. And I guess a few years later, now the group sort of expands across 16 countries. So we're probably the largest of what we do across Latin America, and we have a few other offshoots in Asia Pacific as well. So that's more or less my story. To be fair, it was more by chance, luck, and opportunity than any sort of particular plan.
Yeah, but it makes sense. I often say the harder you work, the luckier you get. And it sounds like you've definitely been very active and been there for those opportunities, because a lot of times people will get the ball and they fumble it, but you kind of took it in. Sounds like you ran with it.
Well, look, in most cases, it's about seizing the opportunity you get. The reality is, yes, for every opportunity you don't take, maybe another one may present itself. But look, at the end of the day, we only live one life. And, it's a matter of hopefully trying to make as many right decisions and getting as many right as possible. And hopefully it leads you somewhere that makes you happy, whether that's with lots of money or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And whatever and however we define that happiness is absolutely key. So we make sure we're making decisions in alignment with that.
Exactly. Look, not everything in life is about money. I mean, look, money allows a lot of things. Let's not kid ourselves here. Mm-hmm. But it's not the be and all and end all for a lot of people. Now, if that is your thing, that's fantastic. Go for it. Conversely, if it makes you happy because you're serving the community or doing something else, well, that's good too. It's just a matter of, when those opportunities present themselves, taking it and sort of furthering your cause in that direction. So, too many times in life, people are not taking the decision that's best for them because of the fact that these preconceived ideas of what they're supposed to do or should do, etc. in life. So anyway, that's, the randomness of my life, I guess. And it happens to, take me to Latin America, although at this present time, I'm actually sitting in Miami. So there you go.
There you go. But the world is so small nowadays and super connected with all these ways that we have to connect it. You can be in many places all at the same time. But so I know you touched on a little bit, the Biz Latin Hub Group. Could you take us through a little bit more about that and how you serve the clients you work with?
Sure. Look, keeping it very simple. At the end of the day, we are an integrated accounting firm, law firm, and recruitment firm. So it's not traditional in a lot of markets to actually have those sort of services integrated, but that's what we are. We have a presence in every major market within Latin America. And as I said, we have a small presence in Asia Pacific, in Australia and New Zealand. And we pretty much work with clients, generally foreign multinational companies, to enter and to do business in the region through understanding the market and to navigating its complexities. As you can appreciate, from a cultural, from a legal point of view, even from a business way of operating, the region is quite different, and therefore we sort of help them through that path and provide all those enabling services to bring it through fruition.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So I appreciate you for sharing that, because I think, and I don't know if you find this exact same experience, not to say they're the same, but I feel like they can impact each other, especially like the legal part and accounting. I always heard, lawyers talk about, say, speak to your accountant and vice versa. I imagine that a lot of those different aspects of business are something that are kind of interchangeable and kind of intertwined, so to speak.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, a lawyer will give you a legal opinion. An accountant will give you generally an opinion, generally based on tax. And a recruiter will simply about, finding the best talent, etc. Now, really, what a client is often looking for is not a legal solution, not a tax solution, etc., but looking for a commercial solution they can actually implement. So by actually integrating those services, you can actually get what will be considered a balanced position in order to, basically ensure a client can achieve their objectives. And especially important in a region that is a little bit more bureaucratic than particularly our North American, or I guess I should say more US or Canadian clients, for example, would be familiar with. Just using a simple example, there are still many, many countries and instances where not only do you sign a document, with a signature, and usually it has to be a wet signature, you actually need to put fingerprints onto documents, for example, as a means of signing that document. And, that may seem a little bit archaic, but very, very common practice, for example.
Yeah, well, no, I appreciate you giving that example to definitely show that bureaucracy that can sometimes happen. And I think that, as you said, to be able to know, I think at the heart of it, that you're not making a legal decision, you're making the best decision for your business, and you're taking in each of these different filters and that knowledge in order to make that decision is absolutely huge.
Yeah, look, I mean, end of the day, most clients just want to go and do their business, and all the legal aspects and the bureaucracy and the taxation, these things are just, in many ways, requirements of doing business. And simply the client just wants a solution to navigate it so they can focus on their core business and making money or whatever, offering their services. And, I shouldn't say all about money, because to be fair, a lot of our clients are actually NGOs as well. And they're obviously doing a lot of good in the region, etc. So that's all they're looking for, is just, help us find a pathway to do what we're here to do, basically.
Yeah. Absolutely. Kind of in the same line as we were talking about that happiness piece, whatever that purpose, that mission is, as much time as you could spend towards that and not have to, I guess, worry about those other things is absolutely huge. You allow people to be in their zone of genius, so to speak. And would you consider that to be what I like to call your secret sauce, the thing you feel kind of sets you apart? Is it that ability to kind of see the forest for the trees and be able to kind of help support clients in the best way possible?
Sure. Look, at the end of the day, that ability to, help the client, particularly to understand and to apply and to navigate, yes, is definitely, a philosophy or our value proposition per se. But with that said, what puts us apart is the fact that more or less we are the only integrated firm in the region, and the fact that we actually do offer very much a regional approach. So we can work with a lot of clients that, particularly, a North American group, let's say they're Fortune 500, wants to enter the region. They're not looking to find a provider in one country, then another one, then another one. They're looking for some way of being able to integrate that, and not only on a country by country level, but on a region level. So I mean, that's pretty much where we do it. And look, I guess we're uniquely positioned that we do put a strong focus on doing what we do in English as well. It's depending on the jurisdiction you go to or the region. I know you were mentioning before you were going to be traveling through to Mexico, and to a tourist area, yes, English is very common. However, in a lot of other countries in the region, English is not common at all. So, that's sort of something we add on to there. And what we do is fairly tailored to the client's needs.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. But I think being able to kind of understand what your clients are looking for is at the heart of it, and being able to kind of, I guess, definitely in this term, to be able to translate and understand that in so many different ways is absolutely huge.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's about understanding what the client's there, what they want to achieve, and then putting the pieces in place to enable exactly that. And hopefully with as little hassle as possible, which you can't get away from. There are complications, doing cross-border sort of activities, but, we're there to try and make it as seamless as possible.
Yeah, try to definitely alleviate that stress, which is definitely the key. And so I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
Look, I mean, a great question. And look, I would say the simple thing is, myself, I'm not afraid to fail. I have a philosophy that, it's more about how I think more than anything else. And it's simply, look, it's a matter of assessing, understanding, and acting. So it's not necessarily about acting impulsively or rashly about something. It's about assessing the situation, understanding the options, and acting upon it. In this day and age, there are a lot of people at the moment that will talk about doing something, and maybe they actually talk and then do it, but they forget the part in the middle of actually understanding and assessing. Or conversely, you have those talk and don't do anything. So it's simply a matter of ensuring you act, because if you don't act, you don't know what the outcome will be. But conversely, you need to be pragmatic enough that before you act, you do understand the options and assessing it. But conversely, once you do act, that you're pragmatic enough to continually to assess and understand so that you can pivot where needed. The reality that the COVID, I guess where we're living in now, is a perfect example where a great business plan or a business objective 2 years ago, as soon as COVID came out, got thrown to the wind because companies needed to actually be pragmatic and reassess their situation, understand their options, and act. And I know yourself, you have a digital marketing company. It's exactly going online and digitalization of your services and your offerings, and how you sort of reach and touch to clients is a perfect example of where companies have had to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate you for bringing that up. And I love that assessing, understanding, and then action, because just as you said, I love that you put in that pivot piece, because I think a lot of times people think that if they just do something and it doesn't work out, then, okay, it's over. But understanding that you're going to pivot and you have to go back and assess, understand, and act until you get that desired result is really the way that you get to that success, and however we might define it.
Look, it's a never-ending cycle. At the end of the day, the world is moving, your company's moving, you're individually changing. At the end of the day, you have to constantly assess, understand, and act. And that act could be do nothing. The act could be, no, we need to move in a different direction because this, based on this new stimuli. So it's about having a logic on how you think, in a structured, however pragmatic and fairly responsive way, I think is, what I would call the CEO hack, so to speak, or something that people can actually do, and they need to be conscious of that's what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that framework is definitely everything when you have that in place, because you can always kind of, go to success, because you just have to continue to kind of go through that filter and that framework, so to speak. So I wanted to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. So this could be a word of wisdom or a piece of advice. It might be something you would tell a client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Look, I guess I'll relate this back to the business I have at the moment. And we work with a lot of clients, more so nowadays, very large internationals, but particularly earlier on, we worked with a lot more smaller individual entrepreneurs, etc. And I guess it does link in a little bit to the last response, and I guess that would be, and this sort of advice to any sort of budding entrepreneur, business owner, future CEO, whatever you call itself. And look, it's about understanding your finances. And that means understanding the numbers of your business. Look, I've seen too many businesses and business owners that they will go out, they will actually have a good business. However, in itself, even when it's successful, it's a failure. You can't just have a great business, manage it well, offer a fantastic service, if at the end of the day, there's no margin, clients aren't going to pay. And it's very frustrating, and just to see people who, put their heart and passion into growing something. However, it's never going to achieve their aspirations of what they're trying. And unfortunately, some people, and, I've been one of them, and I'm not sure about yourself, Gresham, but, inside your own business, you can get yourself into a little bit of bubble. And perhaps it's a little bit hard to put your head out to look at it a little bit pragmatically or, with a fresh set of eyes. So the first thing I would say to anybody is, look, before you go down the path of committing so much of your life and energy and money and everything to it, is just to make sure that the numbers make sense based on what you're trying to achieve. And if they do, and it's not all about making huge profits, but if they do make sense and the business at the end is sustainable and achieving your outcomes, well, that's fantastic. Off you should go. But if it's not, well, there's no point kidding yourself. It's a matter of, look, take a step back, perhaps pivot on your business plan, or perhaps make the hard decision and kill it and move on to something else.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And definitely I can, I think we all kind of have, I guess struggle with that to some degree when you're so close to, your business and everything that you're doing, and maybe even are in love with what it is that you're doing. You can sometimes not look at it, with those real eyes, I guess you can say. But I love that because I'm a big believer in you can't necessarily guarantee success, but you can set yourself up for success as much as possible. And I love how you talked about the finances, because it doesn't necessarily guarantee success. But if you know that if you charge this instead of charging that because it makes sense financially, you're not gonna handicap yourself when you are trying to build your business. So you know how to make those pivots and changes to get to ultimately where you hope to be.
No, exactly. And conversely, if you know a client's going to pay you, let's say $100 for a service or good, and it's going to cost you $99 to produce a good or service, it's not economic. Even if it's the best service and product in the world, if you can only sell it for $100, it doesn't work. And that's something it's hard for people sometimes to, because they are passionate and they do love it, etc. But not every business can make money, in its form. So it's a matter of assessing that. And sometimes you can adjust the way which you operate in order to make it profitable. But conversely, you're better off having gone through the exercise before you've committed everything, and then sort of making that assessment pragmatically, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that makes, so much sense, and understanding like what you're doing in your business. I think so many times you can kind of just, float through clouds, I guess you can say, in running the business, but you want to be very pragmatic and aware of the decisions that you're making so that you are, getting to where you ultimately want to be. Because a lot of times we're trying to solve problems, and the best way that we can do that is to stay and be sustainable in order to do that.
Exactly. And this is coming back to, I think, what I said early on. It's a matter of understanding, and assessing the opportunities you get and then sort of acting upon it. But conversely, it doesn't mean you should act on everything.
Yeah.
I could have a great idea right now, and maybe that's a great idea for something I want to do, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a great idea for a business. So, it's about everything you're doing, assessing, understanding, and acting. It sort of comes back to a simple philosophy that I think governs, pretty much most things in life, if you want to do things in a logical way.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. That's why I love where you said sometimes the action is doing nothing, because I think so many times we think that we have to jump on every single idea, every single opportunity, when sometimes just focusing on what you have and really leaning into that is the greatest opportunity that you can have. So I wanted to ask you now my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So Craig, what does being a CEO mean to you?
Look, interesting question. And look, I guess there are many, many different interpretations of such. Look, I would say being a CEO, it's a mindset combined with, I guess, a position or responsibility. Yes, you can be a leader. You can be leading teams, but that doesn't mean you're a CEO. You can be a manager, but that also doesn't mean you're a CEO. To me, I guess a CEO is somebody who leads and manages a team, sure. But they're also someone who, I guess, sets a strategic direction. And then more importantly, they then have the relentless drive to get themselves, their team, their company, whoever is involved, their stakeholders, to achieve that objective. So it must be more than a leader or a manager. It's got to be a driving force in their own right. And also pragmatic enough that they can assess, understand with confidence, and are also humble enough to a change directional pivot when needed. At the end of the day, a CEO doesn't mean you have to always be right and have all the answers, but it does mean you always have to lead. And I guess that's the difference. You can outsource a task, you can delegate a task, but the responsibility of a CEO is still with them regardless. So I guess that's my interpretation. I'm sure others have very, very different interpretations depending on their viewpoints and context, etc. But I guess that's pretty much where, my opinion is.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. I love that mindset, coupled with the position and the responsibility, and just all the aspects you talked about as far as like being able to you have that humility and all of those things. Because I think as we even talked about, business and being able to make decisions, as you all help people do, it's not a siloed decision. It's ultimately like what people are trying to do to better their business. So as leaders, it's important for us to understand that, it's not just, oh, I'm just going to do and be the CEO because I have this on my wall or whatever. It's because you are actually creating that mindset, fostering that environment, and doing so many things that it takes to end up being a quote unquote CEO. So I love that perspective and definition.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, CEOs are generally paid well, and they're generally looked after. But conversely, it is a lonely position, for many. At the end of the day, you are accountable and responsible for setting that direction and achieving that objective. Yes, you'll have managers underneath you and leaders underneath you, and yes, they will have their part to play within that. However, if someone fails, you fail. And that's it. You've got to bring it and your team. You have to be that force that drives them along. So that's really what I believe a CEO is. Now, I'm sure there are many, many examples out there who happen to be in a position of CEO, but in my opinion, are not because they don't have the mindset of such. And conversely, we probably have people who are not in CEO positions, which in their own right, they are acting in that way. But, it's one of those things that, I think everyone should strive for if it's within their, their aspirations in life. But conversely, if you're happy doing something else, that's also good too.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, you can choose that happiness and however it manifests itself. But I love, that perspective and that reminder as well too. So Craig, truly appreciate that. I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is just pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best they can get a hold of you and find out about all the awesome things you're working on.
Sure. Look, I guess first up, thanks again for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Look, you can reach me through the Biz Latin Hub website, which I'm sure you'll include the details there, or reach out through to me personally through LinkedIn. It's always a pleasure to meet new people. And I guess just sort of finishing off, from my perspective, I'm very glad that I've managed to leave my homeland and travel the world and having to done business in different parts of the world and supported clients doing such their sort of endeavors as well. And I'd highly encourage people that have that enthusiasm to want to do that sort of thing, to to get up and go do it. I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes you do need to do more than talk, and acting is definitely and usually your best interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like Craig said, we will have the links and information in the show notes. And I definitely appreciate, your background and you sharing it with us and reminding us how important it is to kind of go out and venture out and try different things, because I think that not only does that help us and give us that happiness, that enjoyment at that time, but I think it's also something that we can kind of catalog and use when we're making certain decisions. And I think the people that are having those varied, experiences and those perspectives are the people that do and can understand how to find the solutions that we'll need today, but also in the future. So Craig, thanks so much for doing that and sharing that with us today. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Absolute pleasure. Same to you. Thanks.